Hello, I'm Steve Gale. In this training session, we're going to be looking at the fitting and adjustment of a Chalwyn automatic intake shutdown valve to this Isuzu 4-cylinder diesel engine. This naturally aspirated engine is driving a generator set, and we're going to be fitting the valve to the engine just above the manifold. I'm going to begin by removing the original air cleaner, and in order to do that, I loosen this clip holding the pipe to the manifold. I've already removed the nuts holding the air cleaner to the engine support. So lifting this up, we can put that to one side for refitting later. The valve is going to fit right here. So we're going to use some 2-inch pipe. This particular piece is too long for the installation, so I've cut a shorter piece, just long enough for the valve to fit directly above the manifold. So I slide that onto the manifold like that. Take 2 clips, slide them over the pipe, and turn those so that I can get to the adjuster on top, like that. And then I take my Chalwyn valve. Note that the airflow through the valve is downwards in this direction. So this is the inlet side of the valve. And I mount the bottom of the valve to the engine in this location. I'm turning the valve slightly so that this cable for the manual stop control can be curved into a location so that the T-handle is mounted through this hole in this plate. Okay, so taking the outside part of the T-handle, I thread this on like this through this 3/8 hole, like that, and then refitting the original nut and plastic handle to give us the manual control, like that. That goes on like that, and we can tighten that up in a minute. So that gives us the manual control. Okay, so check that the valve is located correctly and the cable is routed correctly, and then tighten up the 2 clamps like this. Right, the valve is now ready for the adjustment process, which we'll be doing using this frequency meter to give us the engine speed indication. So we want to get a shutdown speed around 10% above the 1800 RPM fixed speed of the engine. To get an accurate setting of the Chalwyn D valve, I am using the generator frequency meter, and while slowly increasing the engine speed, watching the gauge so that we get a first point of shutdown, which in this case is when the engine is at about 1700 RPM, which shows as about 58 Hz on the meter. Okay, after the engine stops, the valve will open up automatically. And I'm now going to adjust the valve using these tools. I'm going to put a very small adjustment clockwise on here and pinch it up using the lock nut like this. So this time we'll expect to see a higher speed and generator output frequency reading on the meter at the point before the valve closes. I'll gradually increase the engine speed and carefully watch to see what the trip point will be.
So the valve will now pop open again, and as before I'll put an additional half turn of adjustment on the speed adjuster bolt, remembering to pinch up the lock nut using the 2 wrenches like this. At my final adjustment, I am able to run the engine at slightly over the maximum speed that the governor adjustment will allow, and this means that the generator can operate normally, but if it draws in any flammable gas and starts to exceed around 63 Hz or 1900 RPM, then the Chalwyn valve will save a runaway engine accident. Finally, I'll check that the remote manual shutdown control functions correctly.
Now that we've completed the adjustment of the automatic intake shutdown valve, we're ready to complete the installation by replacing the original air cleaner. The original air cleaner had this flexible intake pipe that I've removed, and I've cut a new piece of 90-degree elbow which I'll use to make a neat installation. So I replace the air cleaner onto its original bracket, and I fit the new piece of rubber hose on the top of the Chalwyn valve like this. Remember that if the engine has an external breather system, that may need to be connected to the intake system in this area above the valve. So we fit it like that, move the clip to this position, and complete the job by tightening up here. Finally, we will be fitting the original nuts to hold the air cleaner back in position, and that completes the installation on this valve. When the Chalwyn valve will be working in an environment that is much colder than the environment where it is being installed and adjusted, please note the following points. Air density and the resulting pressure inside the D valve increases when moving from a hot climate to a cold climate. The D valve will react to this pressure and close at a slightly slower engine speed in the colder climate. So if you are setting the valve in a region with a warm climate but plan to operate the engine in a very cold climate, you should compensate for this by further tightening the speed adjuster. Where the temperature reduction could exceed 50 degrees centigrade or 90 degrees Fahrenheit, increase it by around half a turn or calibrate to add 100 RPM to the final adjustment.